I tell her I'm just going to deduce. Deduce. The other day we're driving down 75, and you see all these silver alerts, right? And I was wondering, do they find all these people at the casinos? Or maybe at the villages, I don't know, but I think they're in one of two places. So, I grew up in the 70s, like you can't tell. And the 70s were a very different time. There was no cell phone. There were no pictures, therefore no documentation, right? You guys know. If there was documentation, everything we did as kids, there would have been many indictments. There was no celiac disease. There were no peanut allergies. Kids now, they got celiac disease, they got peanut allergies. There's a whole generation of kids now that could be taken out by a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. In the 70s, guys used to go to strip clubs. We used to drink scotch, smoke Marlboro Reds. Now guys go to kava bars. You know what kava bars are? They go to kava bars, they smoke blueberry vapes, they drink frozen chai tea lattes. Even when they roll a joint, they put a little filter at the end of it. I don't understand it. The worst part is they sit around and they talk about their feelings. There's a lot of guys here my age. You'll concur with this. We didn't have feelings. We had cocaine, but we didn't have feelings. And what happened to pubic hair? Pubic hair is gone. Used to be all shag. Now it's just hardwood. And you got to wonder, right? I mean, women go for waxing all the time. So waxing, hardwood, it just all blends together for me. And you had to be very, very intrepid when I was a young guy to muff dive. There was a very, very specific technique. Let me show you. You had to get all those loose hairs out of the way so this way you wouldn't choke. And now that we're past menopause, you do the same blow, but it's just to get the cobwebs out of the way. It's sort of like an 80s Nintendo game. You had to blow on it before you put it in the machine. Get all the dust out. So we've been married for 41 years, my wife and I. She's a big hand talker. Like most Italians, we talk with our hands a lot. My wife, when she gets going, she looks like she's going to land planes on an aircraft carrier. She broke her wrist last summer, and she developed a speech impediment. She just stood there going, hamna. She's like a fresh cannoli, my pixie. She smells great. She tastes delicious, but like too many cannolis, she's just killing me slowly. I always say, I'm going to die first, and she says, yeah, that tracks. So we're away with cousins, and we're talking about that very topic. And I said, I'm definitely going to go first. My cousin says to me, well, what if she goes first? He said, you'd be brokenhearted, wouldn't you? I said, well, I'd be right behind her. I just would cease to exist. She goes, he would be miserable because he couldn't get out of his recliner to feed himself, let alone be brokenhearted. So, we argue like any other couple. Guys that are married, have you tried to win an argument with your spouse? You can't, right? You run out of oxygen before you could even make a point. And so I just wait till the end of the argument and I apologize. Because frankly, I like living indoors. Maturing in marriage is accepting the fact that your wife can't remember what she did with her glasses. But she can remember something I said in 1996 at Beefsteak Charlie's on a Monday night at 8:30. That's a memory of an elephant. The three most frightening words in any marriage, I was thinking. When we were living in Jersey, I was thinking of replacing the sliding doors with a French door. The next thing I know, I got a contractor at the house and I'm signing a contract for $50K to put an addition on the house. I was thinking of going to Italy for 2 weeks. Guess what? We're going for a month. And speaking of that, she now has 12, 15 packages a day coming from Amazon because we're shopping for the trip, which is in October, by the way. She returns at least half of those. Now we've got a little Amazon return facility built into our golf cart garage. So this way it makes the returns a little bit easier for her. I decided that I'm going to take language lessons to get ready for the trip, right? So I downloaded an app. I'm taking language lessons. First few days are pretty easy. Most of the words I know. I was able to put together some basic sentences. Then it got a little bit more complicated. And then the app started yelling at me. So now I end up, instead of actually having an enjoyable experience learning Italian to get prepared for the trip, now I just have 2 Italian women yelling at me every day. You know, when I was a kid, my grandmother was a great chef and a great baker. And one of her specialties, besides Italian cookies and pastries, was bundt cake. I really loved her bundt cake when I was a kid. I was maybe 3, 4 years old, and I ran into the house, and I was so excited, and I requested my favorite cake, except that I was dyslexic. It took us 3 days to wake Nona up. Bundt cake, reverse the C and the B. Dyslexic. Okay, that one's just for me. So anyway, like I said, you know, I learned to cook with my grandmother and my mom, and they were both fabulous cooks. And we moved to Cincinnati, right? So we're in the Midwest. And the neighbor comes over and they say, hey, we'd like to take you out to welcome you to the neighborhood. Would you like to go out for a nice Italian dinner? Well, being Italian, I said, sure. So I said, well, where are we going? And they said, Olive Garden. And my reply was, I will not go to Olive Garden because I just view it as a culinary hate crime. You know, my wife accuses me of having selective memory. And I do. You know, she'll tell me stuff, and if it's not important to me, it just goes out of the hard drive. I call it Italian Alzheimer's. That's where you forget everything but the grudges. You know, and, you know, my wife, she had a hard time going through menopause. And I got to tell you, for an Italian woman, menopause is just Mother Nature's way of saying you're going to be dealing with facial hair for the remainder of your days. All right, that's my time. Let's get this started. Our first comic, this guy, thank you. This guy's been doing a lot of open mics. He's been doing a lot of comedy competitions. He's been running all over the place. I see him, I don't know, 3 days a week now. Anyway, here's my buddy, Sean Miko.